I'm Farah Duro, and you're listening to the PCOS Revolution podcast. The PCOS Revolution podcast is supported by Florida Complete Wellness, providing integrative women's health care for nearly 2 decades. To sign up for your free consultation from anywhere in the world, or to get more information on our upcoming 6-week live workshop to help you kick PCOS to the curb forever, visit us at floridacompletewellness.com/PCOS. Well, hello everyone. Welcome back to the PCOS Revolution. I am so excited to be back here today to speak to you from someone all the way across the pond. Her name is Vivien Allred, and she's a naturopathic nutritionist. And I just wanted to share with you a little bit about Vivien's background. She has PCOS, but she also works with women who are overcoming PCOS naturally, and really focusing on hormonal and digestive issues. And I think that there's a lot to be said about looking into the gut and looking to see what kind of pathologies are there, because a lot of times gut imbalances are definitely underdiagnosed and not talked about as much. So Vivien actually works in Manchester, but also with women all over the world. And her focus is really to identify and address the root causes of her clients' symptoms and educate them about the healing properties of food. You can, we'll talk a little bit about how you can contact her at the end, but I think that you're really going to get a lot out of this in a totally different perspective. So welcome, Vivien.
Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
Our pleasure. So could you just fill in some of the gaps and let us know, how did you come to specialize in PCOS?
Yeah, of course. So it's a pretty long story, so I'm just going to give you the short version in interest of time. But it all started for me age 18, after a period of kind of not treating my body as well as I could be by over-exercising, under-eating, and just not fueling my body correctly. And I believe that stress of the whole situation triggered PCOS in me personally. So my period stopped. I developed really bad cystic acne. My hair started falling out, and I got all the other classic symptoms, apart from I was losing weight because of my own exercise problems. After going to my GP, after about 4 months of not having a period and having all these new symptoms, he arranged for me to have an ultrasound, which showed the classical cystic appearance of the ovaries. And then subsequently, my only option was to go on the oral contraceptive pill or the birth control pill. And at the time, I didn't have any interest in nutrition. I didn't really know there was another way. So obviously I jumped at the chance of having a medication that would get rid of all my symptoms, because being an 18-year-old, you don't want cystic acne, you don't want your hair falling out, and you'll do anything pretty much to stop that. So I did go on the pill. The first one that I went on, it was a horrible experience. I'd say that all my symptoms got 10 times worse. So it was actually my mum who made me stop that and go back to my GP and request a new pill. And that's when I stayed on Yasmin for around 2 years. And that did actually help clear the symptoms that I wanted to clear. But after the 2 years, coming up to the 2 years, I started to feel other symptoms appearing. So things like anxiety, digestive issues, food intolerances. And in that final year of being on the pill, I went to work actually in a camp in America, so the children's summer camps. I went to work there for the summer, and I got really bad food poisoning as well. So I think my immune system was really shot at, basically, and I picked up food poisoning, like I said. And when I got home, that's when I kind of turned to look for natural solutions, because my digestion was horrible. I was bloating after everything. I was losing weight again. I wasn't absorbing any of my food. And that's when I myself went to a nutritional therapist who identified that I had parasites and bacterial overgrowths and yeast. And she helped me transition from being on the pill and kind of getting to the root cause of my problems. And identifying my hormonal imbalances and treating that naturally through nutrition and lifestyle changes. And because of that, that's what drove me and inspired me to become a nutritional therapist myself, so that I can help other women do the same and not have to suffer with the symptoms that I had to.
Excellent. Sometimes you don't know how bad you are until you start feeling better, right?
Yeah, definitely.
And tell us something we don't know about your background with PCOS and naturopathic nutrition that as women with PCOS, we probably should know.
So I'd say that there is a big influence with gut health. So even though I didn't have any, quote, digestive issues before I got the food poisoning, I don't think my digestion was optimal. And especially when I had my digestive issues from the parasites and bacterial overgrowths, my PCOS symptoms were 10 times worse. And a lot of women now, you've probably seen in your own clients and in the audience listening today that there is a lot of women with PCOS also dealing with digestive issues, IBS, constipation, bloating, things like that. And there's several different mechanisms. I don't know if you want me to go into them.
Sure.
So there's several different ways that gut health affects hormones and PCOS specifically. I'd say the first one would be the issue with absorption of nutrients. So when our gut health is impaired, that can be for several different reasons, like antibiotic use, stress, food intolerances. This can affect the absorption of nutrients in our small intestine, and we need these nutrients to actually create our hormones, use them efficiently, and get rid of them when we've used them, basically, so they're not recirculating. And this is common in women with PCOS to have high estrogen and testosterone levels. So if we've not got all these cofactors from vitamins and nutrients, we don't have the correct enzymes to actually get rid of the hormones, and they kind of recirculate and drive a lot of the symptoms that we deal with, like acne and hair loss and irregular cycles. And I would say that the other way that gut health impacts PCOS would be inflammation in the gut. So the gut is literally the center of our body, but it's also the roots and center of our health as well, in my opinion. And 70% of our immune system is actually located in our gut, which some people find that really surprising. And inflammation is controlled, shall I say, by the immune system. So if our gut isn't happy, our immune system isn't happy, and that can cause a lot of inflammation. And we know that inflammation, along with insulin resistance, are two of the main drivers of PCOS.
So I have this aha moment. How come research isn't focusing on our guts instead of our ovaries?
Exactly, that's my thoughts.
Yeah.
I think it's a very new idea, and we know that modern medicine is like 15 years behind the research. So hopefully in 10 years or so, this will become common knowledge, because we know that a lot of people are now talking about gut health, but not in relation to PCOS specifically. People are talking about it more in terms of immune health and conditions like eczema and hay fever, but they're not talking about it in terms of PCOS, which is a shame.
And thinking back to this, I just was put on a lot of antibiotics as a child for sinus infections.
Yeah.
And I was year after year after year. And my family comes from a very Western background as far as mostly they're nurses and MDs. So that was really all the treatment that they knew for, to give. And so I didn't realize how it had, really messed up my gut until I entered acupuncture school and thought, oh, wow, I'm really not healthy.
Yeah.
Aside from just a side note, I wonder, what the role is of chronic antibiotics contributing to this when it's wiping out all the good and the bad for just pretty much constantly. And you're on that and not restoring it.
Yeah, that is it's a big driver. And it's not just antibiotics, it's also the oral contraceptive pill, the birth control pill, also acts as a low dose antibiotic in terms that it kills a lot of the good bacteria and allows things like yeast and bad bacteria to thrive. And also the people dealing with acne also get put on antibiotics. So they're trying to address the acne if they're dealing with that from the PCOS, but the antibiotics are actually making it worse in the long run because they're actually destroying our gut bacteria and immune system in our gut.
Interesting. Yes. And definitely overutilized.
Yeah.
So are you finding that in the UK, they're basically using a large amount of birth control as well for PCOS? Is that the mainstay treatment, or would you say there are other like kind of more integrative treatments that you see that are coming up?
No, definitely the birth control pill is number one go-to for pretty much any hormonal imbalance, which is a shame because obviously you're not getting to the root cause. And a lot of the symptoms that people go on the pill for, it's not always about contraception. So girls younger and younger are going on the pill for symptoms that could easily be improved with diet and lifestyle changes. So like acne, hair growth, and things like that. So it's a shame that that's the only really go-to for conventional medicine.
Right. That's the purpose of our podcast.
Good. Yeah, definitely.
So say I am a person who has digestive upset, or how do I know? Is it basically that I'm experiencing bloating sometimes and food intolerances and my immune system's not working very well? And maybe, I look into testing for this. How would you go about testing?
Yeah, so like you say, a lot of these symptoms people do recognise. They could be minor or they could be major things like diarrhea, like blood in the stool, excessive gas or pain, bloating, reflux. But some people actually with digestive imbalances have no symptoms at all. And this is even shown with patients with celiac disease. A lot of them actually go to the doctors and have no digestive issues. And celiac disease is the autoimmune response to gluten, where the small intestine is actually really damaged from the effects of this autoimmune attack. And a lot of them go to the GP with things like fatigue and weight loss and skin complaints and joint pain. However, their gut health is severely impaired, but they're not having outward signs of that. A lot of the tests done through conventional doctors are very, what's the word? They're kind of ruling out the big diseases. So things like IBD, Crohn's disease, celiac disease, they kind of rule those things out through endoscopies and ultrasounds. But the tests that we have access to as functional medicine practitioners and nutritional therapists are they're known as functional lab tests. So they look a lot deeper into our gut health. So certain stool tests can assess the balances of good and bad bacteria, levels of inflammation, certain food intolerances, levels of yeasts and parasites. And when GPs test for things, I had a parasite test after I came back from America with the food poisoning. However, it only tested for like 3 really severe parasites, like Giardia. However, mine was not as severe, but it does cause a lot of digestive issues and inflammation, especially if it's untreated.
Right. And so what did you ultimately do about your condition? What kind of treatment did you get into?
Yeah, so my nutritional therapist who I went to see, she arranged for me to do a stool test, which identified all of those problems. She recommended that I went on like an elimination diet to begin with because I was reacting to a lot of foods and I couldn't pinpoint what were my major triggers. So I cut out all of the main offenders, which are gluten, dairy, corn, soy, sugar, like refined sugar. And I think I started off with the low FODMAP diet just because my symptoms were quite severe. And then I went on a round of herbal antimicrobials. So that included oregano, berberine garlic, all of these things that were specific to my problem and overgrowths, because certain bacteria have certain affinity to herbs, so it can be more effective for certain bacteria. So she designed that protocol specifically for me, and then subsequently went on like a gut restoration protocol. So that included probiotics and digestive enzymes and healing nutrients for the gut as well.
Very neat. And could you feel the relief pretty quickly, or did it take a while?
But a lot of my major symptoms started to disappear. So like the diarrhea and the pain and the gas, that did start to fade quite quickly, but it took a while for the longer term things to improve, like the food intolerances specifically and the bloating. So I did notice a difference every week, but I think because my gut was so destroyed, it took quite a while to restore. And during that time, that's when I started to come off the pill as well. So I think a lot of the healing needed to be done after that as well.
Interesting. So now, for anyone listening, what would be the first thing that they should look for if, they think that maybe there is something going on their gut, or should they, because of the PCOS, kind of not assume, but really, look into that a little closer? Because I know for us with Chinese medicine, we look at the tongue quite a bit, and almost always with PCOS, there is a thick coating there quite often. And that can signify to us, we call it spleen, stomach disharmony or phlegm, but the digestion is not happy.
Yeah. So it is a chicken and egg situation. So a lot of digestive issues can be caused by the hormonal imbalances, but also the hormonal imbalances can cause digestive issues. So you kind of have to choose which you want to start with. But if you're experiencing a lot of the outward signs of poor gut health, like I mentioned, I would start there, because if your gut's not healthy, I don't think your hormones are going to be healthy. You can take all the herbs in the world, you can eat the best diet, but if you're not absorbing things, and if there's chronic inflammation there, you're never going to get full resolution of your symptoms. So I would definitely start with gut health in that case. And you can find a lot of relief with digestive elimination protocols. So like I said, taking out the big offenders, so refined processed foods, refined sugars, a lot of oxidized oils, so junk food and fast food, and then just focusing on a real whole foods diet. That would be the go-to to start with, and then you can start to dig a little bit deeper, maybe do some lab testing if your symptoms still don't clear up. Because I think that a lot of people's symptoms do improve when they just change the diet.
Right. We definitely have our patients eliminate gluten, sugar, and dairy for 28 days.
Yeah.
And after 28 days, when you start reintroducing things, sometimes it's not pleasant.
No,
and you go,
not.
Oh man, it's probably better that I stay away from this stuff. I have personal experience with this. So, and as far as the thought I was having actually about this is that a lot of times we ignore symptoms because we're used to them. And we just think it's like a frog in hot water. It's like, we'll just keep going and feel bad and get used to the bloating and the headaches and the fatigue, because that's normal. And it's not normal. I mean, it's really not. And when people start snapping out of that fog and they go, oh, wow, this is what it's like to have energy. Like, I'm not falling asleep at 5, o'clock when I come home. Like, it's a different whole experience, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Like you said before, they get used to feeling so bad. When they look back 6 months ago, when they start their new protocol, they were thinking like, how did I live that way? How did I put up with those symptoms for so long? But it's just because they got used to them.
And I think that, if you can think back to someone that you've helped, what have you learned, I guess, from the most challenging case that you've seen that you'd like to share?
I would say my own health was pretty challenging and complex. But I would say that a big factor that's not commonly spoken about is the role of environmental toxins. And I can think that's one case in particular where we'd done all of the nutrition and supplements and exercise. She still wasn't getting full symptom resolution. And it was, I believe, that the fact that she was being exposed to a lot of plastics and her beauty regime and She wasn't buying organic food. And I think a lot of that toxicity from the pesticides or the endocrine disruptors in the skincare products, which are hormone mimicking chemicals, I think that was a big factor, because she was doing all the right things in the diet and lifestyle, but she was still exposing herself to all these toxins, which were overburdening her body.
And then so much has been coming out about this too, like sunscreen, causing infertility issues and all kinds of things, and even hair products, many things. And it's really scary. You have to really read the labels nowadays for sure, and especially with PCOS, you're just are already overburdened. And as you mentioned that you had a trigger in your life like that pretty much preceded this, as far as the food poisoning, but also being under stress. And I think that when we think back to things that have where it all started, it is sometimes a pretty life-altering, stressful event. And I think sometimes that's buried a little bit. We don't talk about it, but it's almost always the trigger, I find, with our patients. A lot of times it can be, something that they just start kind of remembering, like, that did start to feel bad around that time, So tell us a little bit about what you've noticed about that.
Yeah, with every client, I do a timeline. So we start from birth, like what happened in your mother's pregnancy. Did she undergo major stress or trauma? When you were born, were you born vaginally or were you born via C-section? We were exposed to a lot of antibiotics at birth. In puberty, did you undergo a major stress? Did you move school? Were you bullied? All of these things really help to paint the picture of what's happened in someone's life. And a lot of the times, like you say, it only comes out in the second or third consultation that there was a major stress, or it doesn't even have to be major. Like myself, it was just not treating my body as well as I could have been. And that can trigger not only PCOS, but a lot of things like autoimmune conditions. It's now known that it can be triggered by a stressful event. And a lot of the time people say, oh, I was never well since so-and-so. So they kind of realise that I always ask that question, when was the last time you felt well? And that can give me a good indication of what changed, what was happening at the time, and how can we prevent other things happening, and how can we get rid of that driver.
Exactly. And I do sometimes see patterns where it's hard to change. It really is. And I think we have a little bit of a controversial thing sometimes with when we have conversations with our patients about the diet choice, because I've noticed in the United States anyway, there's a big move towards being vegan. And I don't think that maybe that's the best route for PCOS a lot of times. I mean, it's very difficult. We see a big difficulty in balancing blood sugar that way, because the carbohydrate intake is just so major. A lot of times it's very hard. So if you have any thoughts about that, I'd love to know how you handle vegetarianism or veganism, or do you feel like it's beneficial for PCOS?
Yeah, I definitely agree with your thoughts. I just don't think that it's suitable for someone with PCOS due to the blood sugar imbalances that we already have. I do think there are some benefits in the fact that a lot of the times we're cutting out a lot of the junk food and we're increasing vegetables. I think that's the main reason why a lot of people feel great. It's because they're moving away from this like standard American diet, and they're now cutting out all the junk food and eating a lot more vegetables and fiber, and they're going to the toilet more. So I think that's part of the reason people feel so great in the short term. But specifically for PCOS, I do think we need a lot of healthy protein, and the protein found in plants is too rich in carbohydrates to get adequate amounts that we need to stabilize our blood sugar.
Exactly. Yeah. And I know that I was vegetarian for 10 years, and ended up not doing well at all. And I think I just see it over and over again, especially with fertility. It's really difficult. And most of the time our patients are overweight that are vegan, which is interesting, with PCOS, because they are trying something that they've heard that could be helpful, but it backfires with PCOS over and over again. So if I just ask our patients, can you think about, well, what is the reason for this? If it's a religious reason, that's something. But if it's something that you think you read something and you thought, okay, this sounds like a good idea, or it's somebody is doing well with it and I'm going to try it, I have to say, I think that it's a disservice sometimes if we don't. I mean, not to say that we have to eat red meat at all. I have not eaten red meat in a long time, but I think we have to incorporate a little bit of variety. And, it's a touchy subject. I know. I just wondered how you handle that.
Yeah. And I'm all for the ethical reasons as well. So if any meat that I have, it's organic, it's grass fed, it's pasture raised, and it's well cared for. I go to the farm where they're slaughtered. So I'm all for that and ethical raising of the animals. But I do believe that there's nutrients such as zinc, B12, iron that we need for healthy hormones in the long run. And a lot of people have to supplement in a vegan diet. And I always think that isn't natural and we should be getting these nutrients from diet first.
Mm-hmm. Right, definitely. And if you're looking at it's switching up your diet, I think talking to someone actually that is, trained in this, instead of just, looking on Google and just saying, oh, that looks like a good idea. It might not be the best idea. It might work for you, but it might not be. So
it might work only in the short term as well. So a lot of these people who are praising the vegan diet, they haven't been on it more than 6 months and they're not yet facing some of the long-term risks and negative effects that might occur in the long run. So it's just taking all of the information that's online, because there's controversy and conflicting advice for every diet out there. So it's just taking what you've read and kind of personalize it to your specific needs, because the people writing these blogs and articles, they aren't talking to you directly. They're talking to the general population, and they're not taking into account your digestive issues, your high stress levels, your PCOS. It's just kind of very broad.
So true. Yes, it is. And so what sort of lifestyle recommendations would you recommend for someone with PCOS, as far as if there's most important thing to change right now in your life, what would it be?
Firstly, I would say stress management. It's just really important. And it was one of the last things that I changed in my own health journey, but it was one of the biggest needle movers. So in my personal routine, I do a lot of meditation, yoga, walking in nature, reading, and journaling as well. And we know that stress can create inflammation, it can drive insulin resistance, it can raise our blood sugar, and it can lead to a lot of negative health problems. So managing that as much as possible is really important. And I would say the second lifestyle recommendation would be doing some form of strength training into your exercise routine, because we know that muscle is really important for increasing metabolic rate, helping our insulin sensitivity, and regulating our blood sugar as well. So doing that 2 to 3 times a week at minimum would be really good, instead of like marathon training and really high intense activity, because that can again drive the stress levels and isn't always the best for someone with PCOS.
I totally agree. And it's always, sometimes you just have to just do it. And like the Nike commercial, instead of fighting with yourself, I don't want to go today, I don't want to do these weights, but I'm going to feel better afterwards.
Yeah, definitely.
But so as far as an internet resource, what's the best one that you'd recommend?
I would say there's one of the main people who inspired me and provided a lot of information at the start was it was a website called Paleo for Women, and that's by Stephanie Ruper. And she spoke not just about the classic PCOS, so the overweight, insulin resistant type. She also spoke about the adrenal kind of PCOS, which is mainly stress induced, which I think I was suffering with. So she has a lot of information on her website. She has an ebook, and I just really found her website really helpful, along with another practitioner, Laura Bryden. She's kind of a PCOS specialist, and she has tons of blog posts and free information online as well. I think those two were really helpful in my own case.
Nice. We will definitely post those links on our show notes also. And why, if you could recommend one book, I know there's so many books out there that are helpful, but if you could recommend a book that was important to you in your struggle with PCOS, what would it be?
I would say a book called 8 Steps to Reverse Your PCOS. It's kind of a classic book, in my opinion, that every woman with PCOS should read, and that's by Fiona McCulloch.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And yeah, I really enjoyed that one. It's not too sciencey, so I think the average person who's not trained in nutrition should be able to understand it, but it provides tons of information that's really helpful, and it gives quite simple advice, but quite effective advice as well.
Wonderful. Well, and hopefully we'll have her on soon too.
Yeah, she's great.
Yeah. And if you could give us a parting piece of guidance, best way to connect with you, then what would be? I know that you do have a free gift on your website too.
Yeah.
When you go there, but tell us a little bit about how you work with women with PCOS as well.
Yeah. So I would say that it's important to get help from someone who's qualified and knowledgeable about PCOS. So you might think that you're saving time and money in the short term by researching yourself on your own and self-supplementing and changing your own diet and kind of spending all your free time researching on the internet. However, in my opinion, it's going to save you time, money, and stress to work with someone who can give an outside perspective and give you personalized protocols and advice for your own personal conditions and symptoms. So that would be my parting advice, is to invest in yourself and really seek help from someone who can help you improve your condition. I do have a lot of information on my website. I have free weekly newsletters and blog posts relating to PCOS, but also women's health, fertility, and hormones. And there is a free guide on my website as well that you can sign up for. It's PCOS 3 nutrition and lifestyle mistakes to avoid. So the things I've seen in clinical practice that women are doing on a regular basis that is kind of preventing them from getting full recovery of the hormones. So if you read that, you can kind of prevent those things and make sure you're on the right path. And on my Instagram, which is Viva Natural Health, VIVA Natural Health, I show daily updates, meal ideas, inspiration, and health education as well.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us, and we're definitely going to check those pages out. So thanks again for coming by. Everyone, have a fabulous week. And that's the end of this episode of the PCOS Revolution podcast. If you've enjoyed the show and want to help me spread the word about how women with PCOS and hormonal imbalances can lead happier, more healthier lives, please head over to iTunes and leave us a review. They really do make a difference. If you'd like to have a question answered on the show or would like to recommend a guest, please go to floridacompletewellness.com/podcast. If you're on social media, you can follow me at facebook.com/FloridaCompleteWellness and twitter.com/FloridaComplete, where I post a lot of interesting research, webinars, and articles on our blog about really getting to the root of hormonal imbalances like PCOS. So it's a great way to stay in touch with the latest developments. Thanks so much for listening, and see you soon.